Hello, my internet friends. Welcome to Walking and Talking, the show where I walk and talk. I'm really pleased by how quiet it is here. If I hold still, this is one of the quietest places I've been in a very long time. It's me, your friend, your media personality. Here to provide you with companionship, and you can reflect on me your various difficulties. Oh, hey, a euro. Making money already. We're starting out slow. Disconnected. A little bit. A little bit lost. It's too early to say that I'm lost yet. What to say though? I'm just gonna push forward. It's so interesting, the effect of knowing that there's an audience, and not only an audience, but some kind of familiarity, some kind of conception of me as a person and as a character and a persona, and that's operating in my mind when I'm trying to make decisions about how to represent myself, how to portray myself, what to say. Like, as I continue to do walking and talking more and more, there's more of an identity in my mind built up around it. I have this conception of, well, this kind of large abstraction that I conceive of as my internet presence, and how what I say now plays into that. There goes the lizard. Look at him breathe. That's some fast breathing. That lizard is panting. Well, his mouth isn't open, but he's breathing fast. Still, this is the same old thing as ever, really. Walking and talking, the same old problem of what to say, but it's always the same old solution. You just go ahead and say something, and just keep going. Just put some effort into continually speaking, and don't let things distract you. I'm trying to focus in a little bit. I'm still seem to be adjusting from everyday thinking. And then I thought, now that I say that I'm expending effort to continue talking rapidly, then I had the opposing thought, maybe I should just relax and let it flow. I still feel, wow, really self-critical, but right as I was forming that sentence, as I was, having this thought of being self-critical, then I at the same time felt I had some kind of glimpse at the truth of the emptiness of self right when I said that. And that was kind of a comforting thought, or made me feel a little bit at ease. But still, on top of that, on top of the emptiness, there's still a pretty intense self-criticism. You could almost say a painful awareness of my own wretchedness, so to speak. But I don't want you to worry too much about my experience of awareness of my own wretchedness, because I believe on a deeper level, or at least some kind of part of me, some kind of guiding part of me knows that this kind of awareness of my own wretchedness, so to speak, or in place of wretchedness, I could insert inadequacy, like kind of just sort of, it's almost like original sin or something. As if merely by being a person, I'm screwing things up constantly through life, just kind of by existing. I'll cause pain for other people. I'll suffer myself needlessly. I'll make mistakes. I will be ignorant at times of my own nature, and I'll be ignorant in ways that do harm. And so very often, especially towards the beginning of a walking talking episode, that awareness kind of comes right out to the surface, and it's painful, but my perspective inevitably changes through the course of the episode. Like, for instance, now I just become aware of, like, the way I'm talking, the way I'm presenting myself, and I become aware of the fakeness of it, there's sort of an automatic quality to it. There is at play certain conceptions of myself in relation to you, the audience, that seem to go unexamined, unquestioned, until I get to this point now. And then I realize that something that I thought of as an aspect of myself, now I realize that it's not really myself. It's just something that's going on without really being connected to, or without seeming connected to, like, the essence of myself, what would actually be the core. But then, so I maybe, like, in one sense, maybe that's a painful realization, but in another sense, it feels like that realization is also part of a movement closer to the self. And I know, and I'm beginning to feel at this moment that everything that I experience is also empty and not really myself. As in every thought that I have that I sort of heretofore was sort of unconsciously assuming was myself. You know, it's me thinking inside my head. It's not really myself, because I feel like I'm observing it happen, you know? Like if you ever have an experience where you feel regret for something that you said or did, or maybe even thought, you know, it's like that's a sort of disassociation with something that previously you thought was yourself. Like you thought one way in the past, and now you're looking back and you're like, that wasn't correct, or that's not how I want to be. Or that's not who I am. That's a little bit of disassociation, or it's a little bit of you know, that's a little bit of insight into what is and isn't yourself. But sometimes I might be talking and I'll feel this embarrassment. This embarrassment that goes along with the realization of the sort of layers and layers of superficiality that seem to make up my personality. But then at other times I might feel the opposite of that and feel an enjoyment of discovering some aspect that maybe seems like it's a part of myself that I didn't know was there. Like if I am speaking and it feels like I'm observing myself speaking, and sometimes what I'm observing seems painfully fake, but then sometimes it might feel delightfully fresh. But if I then take a certain feeling of gratification from that, or pride, then that seems a little bit problematic to me, and that would seem to coincide with with ignorantly believing that that is myself. But my feeling is that if I'm able to continue digging down through these layers, and I think that takes a great degree of concentration, maybe a degree of concentration that I seem to be lacking at the moment because I keep getting distracted by sensory objects. That at some point, delving deep enough into the emptiness, I might come out the other side to where, you know, disidentifying with everything in my experience, I might come out the other side to where if I get to the experience of actually experiencing the absence of self at all, but there still is experience, then it's like, if there is anything that could be called a self, then it can't be separated from everything that there is. And everything that there is only exists by virtue of there being experience. It all exists within experience. It's all is experience, really. Right now I feel as if I'm oscillating in my thoughts between some sort of okay, camera issues hopefully resolved. I seem to be oscillating in my thinking between linear and nonlinear conceptions of truth, by which I mean I'm thinking about a linear model of truth that has lesser and greater degrees of truth. For example, when I talk about realizing that something isn't really myself, and then following that supposedly what I realized would be closer to my actual self, and that through this process of continually talking I would get closer and closer to what is my real self. And as I've been describing that, at the same time, I'm maintaining a nonlinear conception of truth that is this feeling that in actuality there isn't any hierarchy between my states of awareness. There's no one truth that's greater than the other truth in terms of what is and isn't myself, because as I was saying before, even if I completely disidentify with everything, suggesting that there is no self, there's still experience happening, and in that sense, it's like everything in experience is self, where there's no difference between self and other. I feel as if I'm trying to just get a handle on my experience right now, to feel like I'm not just being thrown about by my various thoughts. Like I'm have this desire to feel anchored in my experience. Like right now, if I think about my daily experience, like just my memories of the past few days and my memories of my internal experience and my thinking, it just feels like this constant movement and nothing being solid, no thought being a solid truth. It always moving. But this is kind of my experience all the time. So for some reason, I seem to be looking for some kind of stability in my experience, some kind of consistency in my relation to the world and how I understand the world. Some kind of greater coherence. There's so much information that I'm processing all the time. All these different worldviews, and I'm always trying to reconcile all of them. Like everything that enters that feels like it has some kind of truth to it. It's like how do I reconcile and integrate that with all of the other conceptions I have that seem true? And could I ever reach a place where I can comprehend all of it at the same time? That seems to be what I always want. a solid, unified comprehension of everything that I can experience, including thought. And I feel very grateful for this situation that I'm in now, of having set up this framework. I'm alone, I'm far away from people, I'm far away from, human-made information. I'm far away from any linguistic information. And I've set up this framework where I'm pressured to make my thoughts comprehensible to others. And so that feels like if I can be at all successful in that, then maybe I can be successful at starting to clarify a worldview that does correspond well with the actual world. As in, if I'm trying to make my thoughts comprehensible to you, then it depends on my understanding of what you in general might be able to understand. Something that's more or less common to human experience in general. So that kind of requires me to actually relate to other humans. But I guess it just requires me to deal with human experience. But like, as I say that, it sounds kind of meaningless. Like, is anyone ever like not dealing with human experience? What does that even mean, dealing with human experience? Does it just mean having a human experience? This experience is highly linguistic. This thought experience. In another sense, I feel like there's nothing that I need to do. I'm trying to think of what, what would a comprehensive, unified worldview even be? It's like a map of reality. Is always necessarily reductive. So is that what I mean? Do I mean that I want to create a useful reductive model of reality? But anytime you do that, you always have to be coming from some kind of angle, a viewpoint. You have to be, you have to be coming from a limited viewpoint in order to view anything. You have to be individuated in order to perceive the rest of the world. If you're creating a model, you're also creating your own subjectivity. You're creating your own individuation that perceives the model. As the mind creates the external world, and the mind perceives and comprehends the external world, it also perceives and comprehends a self. And vice versa. Could I give up the effort to create a model of reality? Could I give up actually comprehending the world? Could I give up even the act of perception? Even as I conceive now of conceiving this idea of comprehension and of perception, and to imagine the absence of them, engages my imagination and engages, this abstract thinking, and you could say another form of, it's a form of conception to conceive of a different state in which I'm not perceiving and not comprehending. And even that act in itself is just a continuation of 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 conception itself. Or let me try to put that in a simpler way. To be imagining this other state where I'm not imagining just perpetuates the act of imagining in the present. And so, as I started to talk about not perceiving, I was having an experience at that time of not experiencing a difference between perceiving and not perceiving. That is, I just noticed this experience and I realized that even the idea of perception within this experience is merely an idea. Or to put it another way, that it's not separate from some other thing of non-perception. It seems like, in a way, the separate self only exists in the movement of thought. It only really exists like in a place where you're not looking. It's only in the shadow of awareness. If you put your awareness on the self, if you try to look at it and try to find it, if you try to look right at it, it's not there. It's only in your periphery. It's a kind of mirage. for me, maybe it seems like my separate self seems the most real when there's when I feel really involved with a lot of activity, and my mind is jumping between all sorts of different tasks. Like, I'm thinking about what I'm gonna eat, what I'm gonna eat next, how I should make some money, how I represent myself socially. It seems to only exist when I'm, doing one thing and thinking about another. But if I'm actually fully involved in what I'm doing, it just disappears. Even hopefully, like, I don't know, like, is it here now? It might be here now. Like, in what way is it here now? I've been thinking, I'm talking, and I'm also having thoughts that I'm not saying, because I'm filtering a little bit and trying to make what I say more comprehensible than, like, this whatever crazy stream of thoughts exists in my head. But, like, for instance, right now there's making this video, and then maybe there's thoughts about the practicalities that exist outside of making this video. And it seems like that's where myself would exist in the past, what I remember of, and in the future of, like, what I'm projecting will happen. I keep feeling an urge to sit still, because it seems like when I'm sitting still, my mind can be a little more still. It's interesting, there's still something here that feels like it's me, but like I said, it feels like that is really, like, that seems to be sort of some sort of, like, conglomerate of a lot of thoughts going in different directions. Like, while I was saying that, I was looking at that plant right there, and I'm like, I wonder if that's mountain tea. I think it is. And then, sometimes, like, maybe specific people will flash through my mind as sort of a represent, as an idea of, certain specific people might flash through my mind as sort of people that I might tend to, like, wonder how their reaction to this video would be, or something, as if I am modulating what I'm saying to them, or not necessarily, but in relation to them. Like I'm creating a self in relation to an imagined other, which might sometimes be specific people, but more often is sort of the general you, my conception of you. As I conceive you, I simultaneously conceive me. As I manifest you in my mind, I manifest myself in my mind. But then as I realize that maybe I can chill out on that a little bit. People. I hear people. What a disaster. Where are these people? Oh, man. I hope they're not Australians. They're either British or Australian. I think British, though. Pretty sure. Anyhow, why is it that just the presence of a few other people drags me, kicking and screaming into this strong conception of myself? And why do I want to get rid of that so badly? Because it's painful. Even now. But you have to relate to other people in order to get by in this world. you can go to great lengths to avoid interacting with people. But it's pretty inevitable. Seems like I gotta now let go of whatever experience of non-self that I seem to be clinging on to. Like now I feel another sort of existential pain, I guess. Sort of pain of feeling manifested as a person. It seems like in many of these in a lot of spiritualities, like the ultimate like teleology is to just not be manifested as in a body anymore. Like that's the goal. That's this kind of recognition of life as inevitable and suffering. And it's kind of seems like in times of the absence of suffering maybe could be described as absence of the experience of self, of separateness. I feel mad. I feel critical again. I feel a general dissatisfaction. The general unsatisfactoriness of life is here. Is it because I'm not working hard enough? Can you replace suffering with work in some way? Or are they kind of the same? Am I I feeling this unsatisfactoriness because I'm not working? Maybe that's the case. So how do I make this work? Keep talking more rapidly. Like I feel sort of guilt now. I feel sort of shame. I feel sort of shame at my existence. Can feeling shame be a sort of form of work? Sometimes it seems like it is. Like, you know, having gone through periods of a lot of, you know, shame and self-loathing, it seems like I came to, I don't know, it was like a period of growth, actually. Where this shame and self-loathing were, I don't know, getting rid of unnecessary, solidified aspects of self, solidified identity. How solidified is it now? Wow, man, from this perspective right now, when I think about my life, when I think about just living day to day, this realization feels so kind of like rudely real of how much sort of like guilt and shame and wretchedness I experience on a daily basis, even in just normal interactions and life processes. Like from this viewpoint right now, thinking about it, they feel so imbued with suffering. But I just sort of like make it through them. I just kind of go through life. You know, constant guilt about consumption, about you know, all of my failures, all of my limitations, faults of my personality. All the things that I'm not good at, all the things that I don't do. All the things that I don't have. They're just, it's like a constant like battle going on in my mind. And I'm constantly trying to reframe everything in the positive. It's like constant work to either reframe things in the positive or to like somehow like calm down my thinking and be present I mean, this is my present conception of the past. Like a general kind of memory of my external and my internal experience while I just go through a lot of everyday life activities. And it's like I don't know. Sometimes I look out on all of the other people in the world and think that everyone seems a little or a lot happier than I am. I look at other people and I think no one else seems to be having this experience that I'm having of this constant sort of suffering. Everyone else seems content or happy. Sometimes it feels as if, in my experience, it feels as if everyone else in the world has what I lack. As if it feels as if everyone in the world has found their purpose in life, has found the way to cope with life and to be happy, to be content, to feel meaning, purpose, etc., love. And here am I, lacking all of that, feeling profoundly meaningless, feeling this wretchedness and shame and guilt and just being profoundly dysfunctional and ill-fitting in the world. Now, as I say this, logically, that sounds highly improbable, right? It would be astronomically against the odds that me, one among 7 or 8 billion people in the world, just happen to be the most wretched human on the earth. It doesn't hold up against logic. But then it seems particularly that viewpoint seems particularly true when I look at the media, or if I look at YouTube. It's as if in every other person I can see virtue. In every other person I can see contentment, or I can see wisdom in every other person that I witness. And I see it in them, and then I feel a lack in myself. And then I have to keep convincing myself that I'm an okay person. Trying to convince myself that these experiences that I have are maybe an important part of growth or something, or that they are one end of a or that my perception of them is just kind of perceiving a negative side of what is actually a non-duality, which the other side would be the virtue and the wisdom and contentment. These are just processes that I, am playing out in my head a lot. Well, like this suffering, it seems constant, or like, and it seems as if there's like little breaks from it, or little distractions from it, or something. But then it feels as if like suffering and emptiness are like the truth. That little moments of like happiness are just kind of like little distractions from. But could it also be possible that what those distractions are actually also constitute reality, also constitute an upside to reality? But I know that so like these things that I'm saying now that sound kind of profoundly negative, those I'm not thinking things like that constantly in my everyday life. I mean, there's plenty of negative thoughts. I don't know, maybe I do think things like that in everyday life. The thought that that suffering is the baseline of existence, and that it is eternal. And not limited, also, not actually limited to my body and my personhood and my individuation. Because, actually, you look out on the world and you see all this loss, all this pain, all this suffering that other people experience. You know, all these, you know, horrible tragedies that happen to other people that are worse than what's happened to me. And then you see people persisting in the face of much worse situations than your own. But then, I don't know, then you see people that seem to, where it seems like everything is going just perfectly for them. As if they were just born into a life of perfection. That they'll, you know, I can look at a, I guess there's a difference between like maybe a situation that someone has and their internal virtue. But sometimes it feels like those things are connected to me, and sometimes it feels as if my orientation to the world is determining my situation in the world, and vice versa, my situation is determining my orientation. And then so I'll look, and then I'll see someone else who seems to be in a better situation and have a better outlook on life, and they seem to be free of what I consider the neuroses of myself. And it seemed that healthy mindset seems to, for them, contribute to their continued success in the world. And then their continued success in the world seems to contribute to their increasing ease of maintaining a positive, healthy outlook on things. And then I look at my own situation and I perceive it negatively, and then I look at my own orientation of to the world and I perceive it negatively. And I perceive the flaws in myself, and sometimes feel powerless to correct them. I see them playing out, and I see my reality going in ways that I wouldn't want it to go, and feel powerless. And I don't just mean like external circumstances. Sometimes it, you know, it seems like there is some truth to how one's inner orientation manifests your reality. Like the way that you're oriented, the way that you deal with things has an effect on your situation, And then I see my situation, and I feel as if my own negative outlook on things is creating that negative situation, and but then at the same time I don't know how to correct that. It feels like it's just like sliding out of control sometimes. Man, I feel tempted to carry this rock with me. It's so beautiful, but it's kind of heavy. It's really amazing. I'll carry it with me for a little bit. Maybe I'll find a better one. Ow. Hey, look at that. It's just stuck right in me. Ow. Ooh. It's true. I perceive some big flaws in myself, and then I see them, but then I see them persisting despite my awareness of them. And I try to get rid of them. Like I would like to never feel anger. I don't think it is useful at all. I'm totally convinced of this after reading Seneca of anger. And then I experience feeling angry, and then I feel simultaneously this intense guilt and shame for feeling angry. Damn. Whoa, here's a big one. That's incredible. Look at that. Amazing. Well, at least I'm not feeling angry now. And, you know, when I'm walking and talking, it's like any of those faults, when they come up, they seem to be in this kind of container and in this light of awareness that seems to like allow them to sort of diffuse without doing harm. I think like if I'm feeling any kind of negative emotion, generally I really have no choice but to become very aware of it and to stay aware of it. Like, I can't keep talking continuously about my experience in this sort of like informational vacuum, you know, in a place that is relatively free of the sort of outside reference to the self, you know, relatively free of any sort of distraction that I can project my emotions onto. And then I'm also like continuously talking, more or less, and aware of the publicness of everything that I'm saying. Man, look at this. Look at this. Holy moly. Holy mackerel. And so it's like, this is a process like communing with a larger self. Or, you know, we don't have to use self as a word, but I'm communing with something larger than myself in an environment that doesn't allow me to you know, it doesn't have all the objects for me to project on and to reflect myself from, if that makes sense. There's not like people around me for me to compare and to from which to create this this relative notion of self based upon. There's not a lot of, you know, there's not incoming information that like to sort of fragment my thinking and to continually like shift the perspective. So if I'm continually shifting my thought perspective like all the time based upon incoming information from other people, then it seems like it kind of prevents you from getting very deep. And, you know, when you're in the world, a lot of the time, it's hard to prevent yourself from seeking out these continual sort of like translative information that is, anytime your conception of your own self becomes uncomfortable. Your experience of yourself becomes uncomfortable. There's, you know, an automatic kind of like urge to look outside the self for something that'll ease that discomfort. And so like you go from like one sort of self-help thing to another, you know, all these like different all these different angles of psychology that you can read about, all sorts of different practices you can take up, all sorts of different activities you can do, all of them offering a slightly different perspective on the reality of the world and yourself. So there's this value of remaining with one thing. Because you remain with the one thing long enough, then all this this constant shifting about of your mental framework can die down, and you can go through this perhaps painful experience of disidentifying with certain aspects of yourself, or realizing their ultimate relativity and emptiness. And then eventually you can I don't know what you can eventually. You can be like me. Wouldn't you love to be me? And be quasi-famous on YouTube? Isn't it enviable to be me? Or to be, you know, you could be a more famous person. You could be more famous than me. Isn't that enviable? But I do these walking and talkings And my perspective often changes pretty drastically. Like by the end of it, I'll feel a relative clarity, like something that that I don't really feel unless I really like stick with something for a long duration, and make myself go through something. But I feel like it could be even more intense than it is, Like here, I have all sorts of delightful sensory stimuli. I mean, there's lizards running around all over the place. It's really pretty luxurious. Like, what if I were walking and talking just in an empty room on a treadmill? I wonder if that would be more powerful. But there's something about this that is also kind of soothing in a way that doesn't feel artificial to me, this environment. I mean, it's soothing in the fact that I'm in a place that most of what I am seeing and sensing isn't human made. That it just exists due to the nature of reality outside of human influence. And of course I recognize that human influence is also a part of reality and not separate from natural processes. But sometimes to get some distance from the man-made world can really allow for certain tensions that have built up for you to diffuse. I'm trying to see what is the nature of my dissatisfaction at the present moment. Why does life feel like this constant like striving towards something better in the future. I guess that's just like the, I don't know, like the emotional experience of being human. Do you have to like work incredibly hard just to get a little break from? Is that true? I don't know. Or am I just like lazy? Am I just like missing out on the wisdom that it seems to me like everybody else seems to have? Like, I look at all the like quote unquote like normal people who just like work a regular job, have friends and family, they just go through life and they seem perfectly content just living. Why the hell am I so discontent? I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm making this up. Maybe I'm not as discontent as I seem to be claiming. But I'll go through life and I'm interacting with people and I'm just like, I'm insufficient in this interaction. There's something wrong with my personality, and this other person seems happy and generous with their personality and contributing things of interest and contributing levity to a situation, and here I am feeling just like I don't know, what is it like on one hand I don't perceive the situation that I'm in as a problem to be solved by my contribution a lot of the times, as if another way to say that is just that I don't need to talk that much. Like, I don't see a reason for talking as often as other people seem to see a reason for talking, and that's not at all a criticism of other people who talk more. Other people are talking more in a conversation, and I'm like, that's fine. And I'm like, that's totally cool that this talking is part of, the way that you interface with reality. And there's nothing false about it. There's nothing like inferior about anyone else's mode of interacting. It's like I feel content to be around some other person or people who are talking without saying much myself sometimes, and I'm just like, but then sometimes I'm at the same time I'm like, there must be something wrong with me. And I'm like, what the hell is wrong with me in that it seems like the only time I'm like, I don't know, like having an authentic conversation is when I'm doing it here, walking, talking to you. Is this true? I don't know. Maybe I'm making all this up, and I actually have fine interactions in everyday life. Doesn't seem to be that big of a problem, except for a few people. Some people really get uncomfortable if I am not filling up every goddamn second with pointless babble, because I don't talk much, and then they like have this like intense need to like fill all the space with words, and then they feel themselves like word vomiting into the void, and then they freak out, and then kind of like castigate me as some kind of evil sorcerer or something that made them feel the own void underneath their superficial babble. See, this is my personality flaw coming out. Or in that moment, I seem to be manifesting some bitterness. And then I'm like, why do I have this bitterness? What the hell is wrong with me? I don't know. I feel it now. I feel somewhat animated right now by this feeling. Like when I was describing that situation like a few moments ago, I felt animated by it. By this expression of bitterness, and totally aware of what it is. And, you know, having a conception like, I shouldn't feel that way. I should be totally, you know, accepting of everyone and their different, everyone else's flaws, you know. I'm recognizing at least, you know, one of my own flaws. Who knows how many there are that I'm not conscious of. But then, you know, flawed, speaking of it as a flaw is of course, you know, highly subjective, and, you know, only relative to a certain type of interaction. It might be useful to describe it as a flaw in one interaction, but it might be a total strength in another interaction. It seems like every strength is also tied to a flaw or a weakness, and that to actually speak of personality traits as flaws or strength is not always useful. It may be creating a dichotomy. It's relative to, you know, it's functionality in society, but then, you know, of course, functionality is a relative thing as well, because it's like things that are aberrant from the norm. That's only negative if we accept the goodness of the status quo, etc., etc. You know, like, you know, mental illness being sort of classification that's based on aberrance from the status quo, and so it's like, this, I don't know, what's that sort of thing, like, if to fit into if, you know, if society itself is ill, then we wouldn't want to, you know, be considered sane because we fit into an ill society, that sort of thing. Somebody put it much better than I, and I can't remember what the quote is. Get a load of that rock. All these rocks, man. All these rocks are just ridiculous. Look at that. There's just crystals everywhere. You know, I could just like pick one spot here and excavate rocks all day. I'm just continuing to talk in this stream of varying psychological perspectives. And metaphysical perceptions and what? Walking and talking could always be better than it is. Could be a... What does that mean? What does better even mean? Do I give into enjoying the lush sensorial experience that surrounds me? Look at that! It's like every rock around here is just mind-blowingly complex and beautiful. What the hell am I doing? I'm experiencing emotions. Why? Am I expunging emotions? Am I letting them out? Or am I just perpetuating them? Are these emotions a bad thing? Like when I say experience bitterness up there, it's bitterness in the sense that like it is attached to some kind of narrative, but then at the same time it's like more ambiguous than that. It's like below that narrative is just like a form of energy. You know, and you can see how it's like transferring, like the emotion that you are perceiving in my voice now, the animatedness now, that is in contrast from the beginning of the video. It just transfers onto these rocks. I'm like, give me a freaking break. Look how incredible that rock is to look at. And I'm observing my own human experience from some kind of vantage point in which it appears like just as complex and varied and beautiful as one of these rocks. Like the emotional experience that I'm having feels rich. Right now I feel defiant of the other part of myself that wants to expunge strong emotions. It wants to expunge anger, expunge bitterness. More so, I want to integrate them. I want to integrate them into my experience so that I can experience them like as being more, you know, connected with all forms of emotion, you know, to experience them in their more like constantly changing and ambiguous nature. As being not separated from other experiences like joy and happiness and jouissance. And I you know, I want to be able to include them in my experience without having a fragmented worldview, without having them color my experience in such a way that it feels false or fragmented or limited or illusory or skewed perception of reality, you know? It's true that emotions do skew your experience of reality. But it makes different things true. If you're in total despair, if you are depressed, and you are, you know, you conceive all of reality as a negative, and yourself as an inadequate, horrible person. That's your reality. It's like temporarily real to you, because it is your experience, and your experience is all that there is. And it might feel like at times like that's the you know, that is the bottom line unchanging nature of reality, is that you're just a horrible person for eternity, and that suffering is the only thing that exists and it's eternal. It might feel like that, but you have that experience, but then that you have that experience, within that experience, within that conception of reality, lies the seed of the opposite. And it lies actually the proof of the opposite as well. Because if you're able to conceive of this reality that is only eternal suffering, if you're able to conceive of that, and you're thinking like that's the truth right now, it means that the opposite is also a possibility. Like, in order to think of negativity, in order to think of suffering, you know, in order for either of those things to like exist, there has to be the absence of them. There has to be something such as non-suffering, like a place from which to perceive suffering. You know, if suffering were all reality is, then you wouldn't experience it as suffering. You know, it would be the air that you breathe, the water that you swim in. But if you can perceive suffering, if you can feel suffering, which undoubtedly you can and you do, if you can feel it, then it means you can feel the opposite of it, or you can feel the absence of it. And if you can, then you will. Like, look at this experience now. Just observe the change in the sort of tone of the content of what I'm saying, which has, you know, obviously shifted from a sort of, you know, it's over the course of the video, it's changed from like a sort of like low level searching and discontentment to a sort of like brief, isolated and direct expression of bitterness and anger, and then that sort of like emotional energy that seemed to arise in that expression has continued, and then sort of like just kind of like permeated a little bit, or like morphed a little bit into a more ambiguous type of energy that is animating my talking, but the content of my talking has similarly shifted in a continuous fashion from these sort of like searching existential questions to a brief moment to well, actually a longer moment of like negative perception of myself and negative conception of me and my faults and my flaws, and a negative conception of my lot and life, to then like that flowing continuously into you know, what could be described as like motivational or inspirational speaking, you know, what could be described as an impassioned an impassioned call to realize the, I don't know, other side of the negativity, of other side of suffering, or like an impassioned sort of like slightly meta realization above the dichotomy of technical difficulties of my camera trying to interrupt my flow, but they can't because I can incorporate anything. I can incorporate anything. I mean, I'm saying this with a kind of overconfidence, kind of boastfulness that I have now. You know, look at me. Look at me. I've transformed from a torpid self-loathing. Look at that bird. Holy shit. I've flowed seamlessly from torpid self-loathing to a boastful, overconfident, motivational speaking, in which I proclaim to you that you can and will overcome any negativity or suffering or problem that you have in your life. Because it's all two sides of the same coin. Like this here, this experience here, this like impassioned whatever that I'm doing is not other than the other side of like everyday, mundane, boring ass life, you know? Eating lunch, feeling kind of stuffed, feeling kind of lazy, looking at the internet, checking my Facebook, you know, hanging out, shooting the shit, spending too much money on food, waiting in line at the airport, feeling guilty about contributing to climate change, you know, all these like mundane stuff. Like this is totally connected to that. I couldn't have one without the other. Just like you can't have suffering without joy. Even to the extent that you feel that suffering is all that there is and there's no joy in your life. That's not the total reality. We just have emotional topographies. We have these existential topographies. We're up and we're down. And when you're down, it's hard to see very far, you know? all inevitably come down from this, we could call it high. Who knows, you know? Maybe I'll, you know, I can definitely conceive of higher highs, of manic highs. There are manic highs and there are despondent lows, but I guess my goal is to be able to not be swept away by those ups and downs, you know. That's the typical. That's the typical wisdom. That's like the quintessential wisdom that's like everywhere. Except for contemporary daily life, except for advertising. Except for mainstream culture. It doesn't like, maybe it's in there. Maybe it's in there. But it's in there in such a bad, unhealthy form of delivery, you know? Lizzie. You know, commercials, like, it's like, for me, like, any commercial, it's like so easy for me to see how insidious the emotional manipulation. It's like commercials don't just like tell you like this is a you know, this is a product that'll help you do this thing. This is a product that'll last a long time. No, it's like a commercial is like, it's like showing you this fucking like just like sexy like joyful like version of life that you could be having, but you're not having because you don't have this car, you don't have these fucking shoes, you don't have these fucking glasses frames. You could be this fucking glamorous ass person who's always in the right place at the right time and everybody else fucking desires to be around them. If only you had this fucking product. Oh, but you don't. Oh, and that's why you feel so miserable. That's why you're such a goddamn loser, because you're not, you haven't, you know, you haven't woken up to the lifestyle that's like provided to you by the fucking new like Nissan. You haven't woken up to your true joyful self. The joyful self that like, you know, that like gets DOC sexy specs. Yeah, got my new sexy specs. Changed my life forever. I was a miserable loser. Then I got my fucking new glasses frames. And bam! Everybody wanted to fuck me all of a sudden. All of a sudden, I took on such magnanimous qualities that I was just magnetic to people around me, and my spirit became so much more generous after I bought this product that I saw in a commercial. Hey, Lizzie. it's like these same kind of sentiments are just like ubiquitous in mainstream culture. I'm sorry. I mean, like, I like it too, you know. I get the I see the appeal. I listen to, you know, I listen to rap music. I like it. I don't know. So, like, you know, I'm gonna talk shit about a lot of things, but like, recognize at the same time, like, I might enjoy it just as much as the next guy. Maybe not just as much, but maybe almost as much as the next guy. But not as often. And then at the same time that I enjoy it, I also feel the fucking sickness that it, like, infects you with, of inadequacy. Like, I mean, the rags, the constant mainstream rap narrative of the rags to riches that you got from hustling and from selling drugs. It's like, it's just ridiculous. You know, the excesses. And it's like, even if it is true for like a handful of people, like a handful of rappers, like, get famous and rich from being really poor and disadvantaged, like a handful of them do it, but like, and then like maybe a handful of drug dealers like move up the chain and like get really rich doing that. But it's like, at what cost to other people? You don't even think about the fucking effects to other people. It's like, with drugs, like, any one person's like financial success being a drug dealer is like at the cost of like ruining, you know, probably hundreds of other lives to shit like crack and heroin. And then you've got this musical culture that is there to, that completely like reinforces and glorifies that lifestyle, and at the same time portrays a completely unrealistic notion of success to make any listener, it's sexy, it's like, it's intoxicating to listen to, it's pleasurable to listen to, it like really, like, you know, it like stimulates you. But then at the same time, like, the message is like, you are so inadequate, you are such a miserable wretch compared to what I have achieved, this success that I have achieved. And like, don't like get me wrong in that, like, I'm completely aware of all the systemic factors contributing to this, and like, you know, it's not like I'm blaming anyone. I'm not blaming anyone. But it's just like, from my perspective, it's like just this completely like warped representation of reality that is, I think, like really damaging to anybody who doesn't like understand doesn't understand that it is a warped presentation of reality. And I think a lot of people do understand that, you know. It seems like, you know, people, you know, listen to this like ridiculous pop music and don't really believe that like what's represented there is like at all like realistic possibility for their life, or like even desirable really. But like, you know, just but like still hopefully like take some kind of pleasure in some sort of pleasure in listening to it, or even a sort of you know, enjoy it as this bizarre mirror of society. It's, you know, it's interesting to it's interesting to see what society produces. Like, look at me. Like, look at this. Like, what the hell is this? Car. Game on. Liz. Still have this rock in my pocket. Haven't found a better one to carry around yet. So, you know, now I feel like I have a clear understanding of the value of including in these walking and talking videos the parts that feel valueless while I'm filming them, you know, while I'm experiencing them. Because I think that's, you know, that's truthful to my experience of reality. Like, I'm not just impassionately positive all the time. I'm not, you know, I'm not inspired all the time. I experience just as much mundanity as the next guy, maybe even more. Tile. Man, if I had a rock tumbler, I would be in business. And then it's like, and then you know, after the inspired part, it's like we don't just stop there in walking and talking. It's like we go to the end of 4 hours. You know, most of the time, as long as the camera doesn't crap out. We go to the end because it's like, you know, we're portraying a relatively faithful representation of the flow of experience, which is you're not always in the flow. You can't, I don't know, can you? I don't think you can really always be in the flow. If you weren't, you know, if you weren't bumping into the jagged rocks of reality, you wouldn't really be interfacing with reality. If you're in the flow all the time, it must mean that you have sequestered yourself somewhere that's insulated from actual the real world. You have to be bumping up against the jagged rocks of reality sometimes, and you do it for long enough, and then you find your legs in the gauntlet. Good grief. Look at these. Look at these. Just look at these rocks. Holy shit. Give me a break. These rocks are so cool. Oh. The snail shell. Jouissance! There's one of those bulbs that has a thing grown out of it. Look at that. Ow. There's another one. Look, come on. This can't be real. This cannot be a real rock. Give me a break. This has to be fake. I want to take home every single rock that I see. But then my house would just be nothing but a pile of rocks. You know? Every single one is like so complex and beautiful. It's like I could take any one home, and as if I could contemplate it for a lifetime. But of course, I already have a bunch of rocks at home that I collected other places. And how much do I look at them? Sometimes. But really the most exciting rock is the one that I happen to be looking at. Come on. All the rocks are like crystals. Not all of them. Just enough of them to make it really exciting. Why is the natural world so goddamn enticing to a human? Well, I'll tell you why. Because we don't have to fight against it to survive anymore. Well, maybe we and at the same time we evolved within it with mechanisms of sensory perceptions that are calibrated to apprehend this sort of complexity. Know what I'm saying? We perceive on a certain scale. We perceive this band of visible light that happens to be the right band of electromagnetic radiation that doesn't get all scattered by the atmosphere. You know, the world made us. The world made us. Even though I'm always talking about how we make the world with our minds. You know, now I'm in the state where it's like inhibitions. I'm not feeling so much inhibition in what I say or do. I feel general joy and delight in spontaneously interacting with my environment and with you and with language, and feel language and affect and thoughts kind of flowing through me. You know, it's like this is a sort of high. That's mostly just brought about by doing this. But we still got time to go. So it's like we don't just select the highs and cut them out and leave out the rest. You know, we show it all. We have to remain cognizant of the fact that this joy is also connected to despair and suffering and feeling lostness and feeling disconnected from reality and feeling tossed about by our various thoughts and emotions, feeling, you know, lost in the world and hating ourselves, and, you know, having the real experience of fucking up your life. having the real, true experience of being a fuck up in life, you know? And then that's like, but it's like, it's true while you are having that experience, and then it's also merely an artifact of how you are conceiving things. But it's like merely making this concerted effort to reframe things positively, like, tends to fall short for me. Like, I try to do it and then I'm like, yeah, but you know, I'm really just like, I'm aware that I'm just like reframing something in positive language, and so it's like it doesn't really alter the emotional content. It's like, you know, loss and pain and misery are real, but so are their opposites. Look at this goddamn rock. Look at this goddamn beautiful rock. There's so many. It's like, I just want to like merge with each rock. Like, I want to become that. Like this sensory experience, you know, is like, why is it so good? Why is it so good? It's like too good, you know? It's so good that I'm really suspicious of my state right now. Like, I'm not trying to, I don't want to mistakenly, I don't want to mistake this state for like a profound wisdom or like upwards movement in awareness or something. I want to be, look at what look at this crystal. This might, damn, this might be better than the one in my pocket. This might be the new winner. I'm gonna have to take both, I think. Lizzie, you probably didn't see that one. It's because I'm actually experiencing a great deal of sensual pleasure right now, just visually, aurally, tactily, you know. This stimulation is really stimulating me. Look at, like, anywhere I look, it's just like ridiculous. And then on top of that, it's like I'm now taking on a lot of like emotional pleasure in talking to you. Like, you can probably hear it in my voice, the way that I'm enunciating. It feels like eating when I'm hungry. It feels like a tall glass of water when I'm really thirsty. Oh, speaking of which, let me just point you towards that, any rock, like point you any direction, and it's breathtakingly beautiful. sorry to interrupt the natural beauty with the man-made consumable. Is this pleasurable for you? Does it incite any envy in you? Like envy for me either A, being in this place, in this situation, or B, envy of my jouissance at the moment, envy at yeah, just envy at my present experience. Or envy at my broader situation, of which you might know you know a limited amount about. But if you are understanding what I'm saying correctly, then you'll understand that there is nothing to envy. You'll understand that any joy and happiness that I experience and put on display in walking and talking is totally inextricable from totally you know, mundane suffering, total quotidian malaise. I can kind of guarantee that like much of the time I'm hating myself as much or more than you do. I'm just saying that, like, now it seems like I am like my current perspective on my everyday suffering is like one actually more of what's the word? It's more a source of like solidarity and connection with other people now, because now I'm sort of, now my perspective seems to be not so much that like I'm the most miserable person in the world, but just that, like, my perspective has shifted now that these are kind of common experiences to everybody. And I might even be so conceited and boastful and overconfident and boastful enough to say that if you aren't frequently experiencing misery and self-loathing, then it could be the case that you are not living a truthful existence, not living an authentic life. You're not as authentic as I am. I'm miserable because I'm authentic. Anyhow, is that flower spike the thing that comes out of the bulbs? It is, I think. Yeah. Boy, I could really, you know, say that my emotional topography is pretty uneven these days. I'm pretty up and down. Like, I'm up right now, you know, but it's like surrounded by a sea of down. Good grief. But, you know, it's like what that kind of means, though, it's like I can actually feel connection with all that downside, all that misery and suffering. Like, I can feel like I can be connected to that, but still feel positive right now. It's like, you know, it's like when you feel like this, it's like your view on everything is different. Like your view on your previous view. And it's you know, it's of course not the total full reality. It's like I recognize that I am going to be miserable again in the future, and probably not very long in the future. But at the same time, you have an experience like that, and you're just like reminded that there is meaning inside all of the meaninglessness. There's joy inside all the suffering. However much suffering you experience, you will also feel happiness again. You'll feel inspiration again. Like, and not only that, but also like I'm having this experience, and there, I should hopefully receive a kind of insight from this experience, or at least I'll have a memory of this experience. Look at the... Can you give me a break? Fake. Faked. That is a fake rock. They edited it. It's looped. I'll have a memory of this experience, and like that can, you know, that can guide my actions in the future. And just maybe I'll get better at guiding my life into the sorts of situations in which I feel joy and freedom. Maybe. It at least feels like that's a possibility. We're getting closer and closer to a shore that we've been seeing for a long time. Meh. That rock's only astoundingly beautiful. Look at that. Can you believe this shit? I could go on an endless stream of expletives and not even touch upon the beauty of this here rock. Holy effin' mackerel. Holy freaking guacamole. Holy mole. Holy mole. Folks. Jumping Jehoshaphat. I just want to, just want to take the whole island home. Can I do that? Can I ship it? Can I FedEx it to my house? Flat rate box? What if we enter the spiritual doldrums again? We might. The doldrums are never far off. Quotidian malaise. Always chomping at our tail. Always, what's the expression? Always waiting in the flanks. The flanks? Should you let your guard down for a moment, it'll come and devour you. And even if you don't let your guard down, but life's uncontrollable circumstances whip you down to the ground, as they do. Every miserable experience that you have is now the new territory for you to adapt to learn how to navigate, to learn how to keep your balance in that sort of situation. So you're stronger and stronger and more resilient and able to incorporate more and more varieties of experience into your comprehensive worldview, in which you're moored in reality, and understand the non-duality of everything, and increasingly able to maintain not only just a conceptual understanding of non-duality, a conceptual understanding that your suffering will turn around and stuff, but like increasingly, hopefully, that being incorporated into your emotional reality as well. But it's no consolation, really, because it means you have to actually experience the emotional pain. I think maybe seems like, yeah, like, yes, like you can't really escape the emotional pain and still like become really emotionally resilient. I don't know. Sometimes it seems like other people can. I don't know. Maybe that's just my false outside perception. Or maybe those people are just already experienced all the pain and now they're really resilient. We're getting closer and closer. Maybe I should actually start extending the duration of these to the limitations of the memory card. That'd be intense because this one can hold up to 8 hours of this footage. Can you believe that? Should probably do an 8-hour walking and talking. Well, I'm not talking as much now. Does that mean we're in the doldrums? Does that mean we're returning to quotidian malaise? Hat tip to my boy. That's whenever I say a phrase that I heard from one of my friends. It's a form of accreditation. Well, you know, I would say that I feel happy right now. And as I said that, I felt at the same time accessing a deeper, you know, experience that where emotions, you know, don't really exist. Also, it's like it just got freakishly quiet. This is like the quietest experience I've had, and I don't know how long. There's barely any sound. I hear a very faint buzzing of flies and an occasional goat bell. Uh-oh. I hope these guys don't want any trouble. Car. Game on. Oh man. This one with the horns looks like it could fuck me up if it wanted to. Is he just like hiding down there waiting to ram me? Dude, where'd he go? There he is. This is, I guess this is just like, this kind of feels like contentment to me. Like there's not too much. It's like, it's not like I'm currently like feeling exactly like some kind of spiritual high or something like that, but it feels like an experience where there's just like not much tearing at my soul or mind at the moment. Only a little bit, just a little bit. Also, I don't think I could ever get tired of looking at goats. That's probably not true. Maybe I could if I were like held, forced to look at goats against my will for an extended period. Maybe I would get tired of it. I think it's all about, you know, whether it's consensual or not. Those look like some old olive trees. But you know, I'm not like impassioned right now. Oh, another quiet spot. It's like certain spots around here, it gets really quiet. But I feel a dropping off of that, like, at least, you know, for now I feel kind of dropping off of the existential agitation, you know, the dissatisfaction. But maybe, you know, maybe because it's so quiet right here, it's making me speak quietly, and then that's making me calm down. Am I going the right way? Is this a path I can take? It looks like it is. Oh, there's spray paint here. Looks like it's a path. It's funny, like I'm coming to this place that I'm unfamiliar with, and I'm like slightly, you know, not 100% confident that I'm supposed to be here, or if, you know, or it's just like, actually I feel kind of like humbled by my surroundings. And can no longer maintain this sort of like brash, boastful swagger. I feel more a general sense of awe and reverence at the moment. Still not entirely sure if I'm in a place where I'm supposed to be. There's another like apparent hiker down there. It kind of feels like I'm in a zoo enclosure or something. Like a really fun zoo enclosure. Whoa, look at that tree. Look at that tree. That's got to be hundreds of years old. That is an olive tree. Can't really talk here. They're listening. remember before when I made these walking talking episodes all about the internal, and I would completely ignore all external stimuli, and I would keep talking like super continuously without even allowing a few seconds break? What happened to those days? I never have really been searching out adventure. I don't care that much about having specific experiences, but now I'm just kind of find myself here. It just feels impossible, the amount of complexity that there is just on the earth. Like any one, like, you know, I could stay with any, like, you know, quarter-mile radius and find, you know, an abundance of sensory stimuli. But, you know, it's not home, it's the unfamiliar. I would make a pretty decent goat. This is a lot of not talking. For some reason, I just felt hushed. But I'm really, I don't know. It seems like filming this experience enhances it for me. It's not quite the same as taking pictures where I have to like look through the viewfinder. It's like I'm constantly taking a picture. How do these snails hang out in such a dry landscape? Look how far we've come. Coming down off the mountain. Coming down off the mountain of life. Look at that. Coming down off the mountain of life, humbled. Humbled and reverent of life in the most broad and inclusive sense, like just reverent of the mere existence of experience, and of being an experiencer at all. And then not only that, but to actually feeling grateful to have this body that can move through reality and continue experiencing the world. It's as if like it's like as if I even feel some acceptance of the self-other duality, as in feeling like this separation is okay. It's okay for me to be me here, because then I get to move through the world and discover, and to be so grateful for the freedom to be able to do that, for all the just the variety of experience that is possible in this life. Boy, the goat turds and olives bear a striking resemblance. Hope I can get out that way. I'm just hoping that I'm not coming out on somebody's private property. Damn. If I am, it was worth it. Kind of, starting to return to the quotidian, but without the malaise for the time being. Oh, there's a road. So as soon as I get down there, I should be in the clear. All right. Back in the mapped world. That was something. I'm satisfied. I'm a satisfied customer. No complaints here. I'm speechless, but not really. I'm back on the road here, so I can walk on the road. I should be able to talk. We're almost, you know, we're almost where we're going, I guess. That is the return to everyday life, although I don't know how long I've been going actually. Maybe there's a lot more time to go. Oh no, we're like almost at the end. It's like really good timing actually. So it's like this can be like, you know, conclusion, if there is such a thing. Look at these tiles. I'm just talking. Remember when we were up there? We were up there. We were all the way up there. Now we're down here. All right, here's like the thickest tree yet. Crikey. Is this a joke? Nah, that tree's too thick. It must be fake. What? No. That tree cannot be that thick. What? What? It just doesn't stop. But we're about to be among the populated world, so maybe this is the right time to sign off, log off, or whatever.